Again, thank you to all that you guys are doing to support this, but also, it keeps striking. It just keeps coming as a very sound reminder that every time I hear the percentage of folks from UTC and across the city that are working from home and working remotely and just keeping the wheels turning on your organizations, I think you should all just give yourselves a big round of applause, because it ain't always easy, but you guys seem to get through it with a lot of grace and finesse. So anyway, happy Thursday. Today we're going to be talking about calm and Shewanee, what was the other one? Connecting?
Compassion.
Compassion. There we go. Calmness and compassion. So my purple polka dotted hat and shirt are supposed to provide a calming influence. It's also supposed to be somewhat compassionate in sharing just a little faith and joy. So anyway, I'm going to shift it over to Shewanee, and she's going to calm us down and make us care more about each other.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, John and Jeff, for all that they do behind the scenes to make these sessions happen each morning. I'll go ahead and share my screen. And it's always so good to start our day with humor. So that's maybe one thing that we can take away already, is making sure that we're finding those small moments just to connect and laugh. So our first C, power C for today, is calmness. So calmness, as everyone should probably have kind of a woo-saw moment right now, is a very difficult thing to practice. So I'm saying first and foremost that calmness takes patience and it takes practice. We have to think about ways that we consistently can remain calm during these particular times where there's a lot of unknown, there's anxiety and frustration. We've talked about earlier in the week how to kind of address those particular feelings, which is really just start off being honest about how we feel. And we know that it kind of changes day to day. So one way that we can practice calmness is potentially getting up at maybe 5 up to 15 minutes earlier before our day would normally start, and really visualize calming places. So for me, it would definitely be a beach with beautiful blue skies and Laura Cagel's background right now. For others, it would be, for my husband, I think it would be somewhere in the woods, just amongst the trees and being in nature. So it really just depends on what works for you, but a place that you can visually kind of tap into your mind where you can see yourself in that space, remaining calm, practicing your breathing, and just really being present. One way to really practice calmness is to practice the art of deep breathing. So if we were face to face, I'd ask you all, how many of you have practiced deep breathing or done it before? And so this is something that I've been practicing probably the last couple of months more consistently. And one thing that we know about deep breathing is that it improves posture. It reduces your stress, it improves your digestion and sleep patterns, it lowers your blood pressure, it aids and supports weight loss. So there's a number of different resources and tools that we'll talk about in a minute that can really help us to practice deep breathing. So any respiratory therapists and nurses out there I know would probably agree that if we can really kind of center ourselves and center our breathing, there are a lot of physiological and physical benefits that come with deep breathing. So there are a lot of different apps out there. So whether you have an Android phone, an Apple device, some of them cost a small fee, some of them are free, some of them you can just load through the web, but these are kind of the top ones that I've seen and most of these that I've tried. So Headspace is one, Calm, Stop, Breathe, and Think, Insight Timer, and 10% Happier. So it really just depends on what your device is and how you would like to utilize these apps. Some are for deep breathing, some are for visualization, some are for meditation, some are for activities that you can do individually or as a family. So I would say if you have a little time today or even this weekend, just kind of think about these, do a little research and see which one would be best for you. So it really depends on your device. It depends on, if there's a cost, but all of them, if I'm not mistaken, have at least a 7-day free trial where you can see which one of those would meet your needs depending upon what your particular needs are. So part of remaining calm during this time is to be careful that we don't become so inundated with information that it changes our mood or that we start to panic. I know I'm guilty of this. I'm sure that I'm not alone, where you can turn on the news, any news station. We're just constantly being informed, which is important to be informed, but we don't want to be so informed that it changes our conversations, where the only thing we talk about is COVID-19. And again, not that we don't stay informed, not that we're not mindful of what's going on and how it's impacting our community and nation. We want to make sure that we're getting accurate information and that we're also not listening to the news and reading so much that it really changes our mood throughout the day. I recently heard that we should listen to the news 2 times a day, once in the morning and then once again in the evening. And it really allows you to focus the majority of your day on other things like work and working from home, but also being present with our family and friends. So the big question, right, is how do we do this? Oftentimes we've heard that many of us are multitaskers, but from what I've read, it sounds like that when we're trying to practice the art of calmness, we should really avoid multitasking. So if you're having breakfast with your family, be present and have breakfast with your family. If you're enjoying a good cup of coffee by yourself, be present and enjoy that cup of coffee by yourself. So the idea that we're kind of managing 2 or 3 things all at the same time is something that we should really try to avoid when it comes to multitasking and remaining calm, which I know is hard to do because we've got folks who are homeschooling and then trying to manage work. So it's a difficult thing to ask, but it's something at least for us to be mindful of. So it's important to focus on one particular activity at a time. And once you finish that particular activity, you can move on to the next thing. So staying positive, disconnecting. I'm guilty of this, of just having kind of the TV on in the background. So I find myself now just turning the TV off, listening to music that is positive. I'm a big Stevie Wonder fan, so that's typically what's playing in the background when I'm at home. And so it's kind of a way for me to just enjoy and be present where I am and get connected to the work that I need to complete. It's also important that when we practice remaining calm is that we get enough sleep. I know I'm not alone, that if we get enough sleep, it changes the outlook on how we start our day. But if we're not getting enough sleep and we're irritated and we're tired, probably our family members can say, can you go back to bed and start over? Or do you need a cup of coffee? Or whatever it may be, but it definitely changes our mood of how we get up in the morning. And then lastly, kind of thinking about how we can incorporate meditating and yoga or mindfulness throughout the day. This can be in the morning, it can be throughout the day, it could be in the evening, but it really just kind of sets the tone for remaining calm. So we first talked about calmness today, and now we're talking about compassion. So compassion is a really important virtue, I would say, that all of us can benefit from, because a kind gesture can reach a wound that only compassion can heal. These other quotes from the Dalai Lama: compassion and tolerance are not a sign of weakness, but a sign of strength. And if we want others to be happy, we have to practice compassion. And if we want to be happy, it's important to practice compassion. So as we move on and kind of think about compassion, if you can think really quickly and just maybe even type it into the chat box, what is something that someone has done for you where they've shown you compassion? Recently, when I was home last year in St. Louis, my mother and siblings and I were at IHOP, because that's one of my mom's favorite places to eat. So we were at IHOP and we were just laughing and having a good time. And we come to find out that the gentleman behind us had paid for our meal, something we were not expecting at all. And so he left before, he made sure to leave before we could even thank him. And so when someone does something for us, we get think about how can we share that moment? How can we share that with someone else? And again, it doesn't always have to be monetarily. It can be our time. It can be our effort. It's volunteering, ways that we can help and support others. So how you choose to exercise and demonstrate compassion is completely up to you. I think even a small thing when you're taking a walk and we're getting those steps in the evenings, is just waving to someone. Again, maintaining social distancing with our 6 feet apart, but just waving to someone, saying hello, smiling, that's a gesture, because sometimes we forget to do those things. So even everyday activities that we have, these are ways that we can think about how we can show compassion to others. So whether we're taking a shower, making our bed, getting dressed in the morning, having a cup of coffee, waiting in line. Those are small moments in time that we can think about being patient, being present, and thinking about how can we help someone else. So part of having compassion is practicing mindfulness. And one way to do that is to think about kind of this image here. Is your mind full, or are you mindful? So oftentimes we think about all those types of things that we have to do all at the same time, versus are we kind of stopping and being present in the moment about one particular thing and really starting our day with gratitude and positivity. So if we think about how we can forgive someone that maybe has wronged us and show gratitude for the things that we're grateful for and appreciative of. So as we move forward and wrap up for today, think about, in terms of calmness and compassion, when someone says how you're doing, how are you doing? Think about it in this way instead. Instead of saying, I'm doing okay, or I'm not that bad, maybe that we can change our language and say, I'm better than good. So when we say, how are you doing? If we think about saying, I'm better than good, it really sets the tone for that other person and for yourself to think, I'm doing pretty good today. I'm better than good, just versus I'm just okay, or I'm not that bad. Because I'm not that bad has not as much as a positive tone than we think about saying, how are you doing today? So I want us all to think about being positive, showing calmness and showing compassion, to think about instead saying, I'm better than good. And so now we have time for questions.
Hey, Shewanee, this is really good. A couple of thoughts while folks get their questions together. I don't know if it's a quote or not, but I've always heard or lived by, if you want to make yourself feel good, give somebody else a reason to smile. And that really does help bring your spirits up. And I saw a couple of folks talking about and agreeing with you about limiting exposure to the news. It is important to stay informed, but if you're like me and an introvert, listening to too much of this throughout the day, it will really, really start to take a toll, because you process it all internally. And there's no way you have to find some release to get rid of that. So it's important to be very, very mindful of how you process the world around you. Not to suggest extroverts don't feel sympathy or empathy toward folks and can't start to feel down, but they can release that negative energy much, much easier and much faster for folks than the introvert folks.
So if you do have an Apple Watch, my watch tells me to breathe throughout the day. When it says, for my Apple Watch folks, when it says stop and breathe, that's a warning sign. It's an indication that we need to just do that, right? So no matter what device you have, everyone needs to really be mindful of their breathing. And again, taking slow, deep breaths. So we're checking for questions.
I have something, Shewanee.
Sure.
Thanks again for doing this. And
My pleasure.
what I've become aware of just within the last really day or two is the opportunity we have to kind of rethink some of the conventions that we have that have to do with how we relate to other people. And here's what I mean by that. Normally, if you imagine going for a walk, like out around Chamberlain Field, you would be aware that there were other people doing the same thing. And when you came within a certain distance of each other, it would become appropriate to nod or to greet them or to smile. But now we're all kind of afraid to connect in those ways. And we're also afraid to penetrate the distance within which it's typically considered appropriate to engage.
Right.
And so what I've started trying to do consciously is changing my measurements so that I will wave to people when they're 20 feet away. And then we're kind of recognizing that as we get closer, we're going to swerve instead of having a chance. Or like yesterday, I stopped my car. I had to run an errand for the family, and I stopped my car and hollered at somebody who had a really cute puppy they were walking, because I knew I wasn't going to be in her space. And being outside has become so much more lonely than it used to be in some ways. So anyway, I just thought I'd share that, because I haven't completely figured it out. And I don't yet have any restraining orders pending, but I feel like you all may be subpoenaed at some point as a result of this.
We're always going to wave to you, David, and I love that suggestion because we're still acknowledging people's humanity even from a distance.
Yeah.
I see that people are thinking about, Laura, that was your question? Go ahead.
I was just about to ask what I asked in the chat. Did you see it?
Yes, in terms of balancing and staying informed and becoming overwhelmed by it too. One thing that I've done is we don't talk about COVID-19 during dinner. So we don't talk about it during meals. We talk about, right now we're watching Tiger King on Netflix. I'm not sure if anybody started watching that. So we watch things that feel very entertaining. I'll say it that way. And I see a couple people nodding their head. So we don't talk about it during meals at all. And we don't talk about it right before we go to bed. So I'm usually the one that's informed of saying, you know, hey, Mo, this is what's going on. And he's like, okay, we're informed. And we're still practicing the same thing. So even I think after, you know, towards the end of the month and even next month, it's still practicing good hygiene, still practicing all the things that we've really everyone has really been honing in on. But we don't talk about it during meals. And when we talk to our family and friends, we have a time limit on how long we talk about it. So when we have our family chats on Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock with my family, we give it a certain amount of time, and then we talk about each other and what's going on in each other's lives. So that's been one strategy that's worked for my family. And we talk about it in the morning in terms of watching the news, and then we talk about it in the evening. So we really try to stick to our 2 times a day. Jill said that Oprah and Deepak have an app for meditation. Every 3 months or so, they have a 21-day free meditation with a central focus on a specific topic. So that's another great way to connect as well. So if you all have resources that I haven't found or utilized, again, please feel free to share. I keep a mirror at my desk to remind myself to smile. I love that idea. That's a really good one. We try to, again, watch something, listen to something, show each other memes, jokes. I mean, things that really keep the mood lighthearted throughout the day. Yes, Tiger King. Let's see, any other questions? Yes, I'm a huge fan of The Office. That's definitely on in the background with Stevie Wonder from time to time. And again, a gratitude journal, anything that really keeps us in the mindset of thinking about how we can support and help others. So even if you're not volunteering or going to any particular space to help out, there's a number of different ways that we can help our small businesses and restaurants. Again, checking on family and friends, just say, hey, I'm thinking about you. It's a good way to start our day. And this is a great way for me to start my day as well, because now I feel energized because I see all my beautiful colleagues and friends smiling and giving positive words of affirmation. So we'll be ready again for tomorrow.
Wonderful. Well, thanks, Shewanee, again for doing this and leading us through the week and getting us inspired to go out and spread positivity. Thank you for all of you that keep joining in each day. The numbers seem to keep growing. I want to give you a couple of little teasers. I think there's a possibility that we may have a very special guest tomorrow, and I'm not going to say anything more than that. But Jeff and I are frantically working behind the scenes with this person's agent to make sure that they may be available. So just a little teaser there for tomorrow. And then next week, to give you a little preview of something that we're working on, if any of you know Donna Van Natten, who is a leadership person in town that we work with, she may be joining us next Tuesday and Thursday to do some fun little bits on body language on webinars. So could be sort of interesting. If you're not familiar with Donna, she's got a couple of books out about body language. One of her most recent is Body Language in Politics, which is also very fascinating. But nonetheless, stay tuned for tomorrow. We're still working on a special guest, and then we'll be talking more about next week. Thank you all so much.
Added real quick, John, to show compassion for our students as well. I think Dr. Ellis said that. So let's keep that at the center of what we do as well, is showing calmness, compassion, and commitment to our students, because they're stressed, they're struggling, and I know they need us more than ever. And I know we're all doing our part to make sure that they finish the semester strong. So big congrats to the UTC family for always keeping our students at the center. So thanks again, John, and everyone else. I appreciate it.